A dam can look permanent right up to the moment someone decides the river matters more. Removing one is not demolition followed by applause. We are here to determine the GOAT of completed large dam removal river restoration projects. The field is completed large dam removal river restoration projects. It is surgery on a living system, performed while water, sediment, fish, roads, utilities, communities, and old promises are all still moving. The field here is completed large dam removal for whole river restoration. Excellence means reopening meaningful habitat, managing the material trapped behind concrete, surviving the engineering hazards, and producing recovery that can actually be measured. A dramatic blast is only the opening move. The difficulty begins with scale. A barrier may sit at one point, but its effects travel through an entire watershed. The land drained by a river and all its tributaries. Migrating fish lose access upstream. Gravel stops moving downstream. Reservoir shorelines replace currents, and towns learn to depend on the altered landscape. Then there is sediment, sand, silt, gravel, and organic material stored behind the dam. Release it too quickly and water quality can collapse, or habitat can be buried. Release it too cautiously and the project can become slow, expensive, and vulnerable to floods. The river will move the material, but engineers must decide how and when to let it. The best projects also solve a human problem. Dams can supply power and jobs, yet they can also sever indigenous fisheries, inundate cultural places, and lock communities into decades of argument. A GOAT-level removal must therefore combine engineering with law, finance, ecology, and enough legitimacy to outlive the political moment. We will judge the contenders by 5 things: ecological reach, technical difficulty, cultural consequence, strength of measured results, and the value of the project as a model for others. The winner cannot merely be the largest. It must show what becomes possible after the machinery leaves. On Maine's Kennebec River, Edwards Dam became a legal and political precedent. Federal regulators declined to renew its license, and the dam came out in 1999. It was a striking reversal of the usual assumption that an operating dam's private benefits automatically outweighed a river's public value. The river responded quickly. Migratory fish regained access above the former barrier, and NOAA has linked the broader restoration effort with a 228% increase in river herring. Edwards showed that removal could be a serious management choice rather than an environmental fantasy. Its limitation is scale. One relatively modest dam could not by itself restore the whole basin. Condit Dam on Washington's White Salmon River posed a different test. The structure stood about 38 meters high and had blocked migratory fish for roughly a century. Its removal in 2011 would reconnect habitat, but the reservoir held around 1.8 million cubic meters of fine sediment. Enders breached the dam rapidly. In the first 90 minutes, about 10% of the stored sediment moved, producing a dense, muddy flow. More than 60% of the reservoir deposit eroded within 15 weeks. That made Condit an extraordinary natural experiment in how a steep river reorganizes itself after a sudden release. The Penobscot River Restoration Project was less a single removal than a negotiated redesign of a working river. Tribes, conservation groups, government agencies, and a power company agreed on a package that removed 2 lower river dams, added a nature-like bypass at another, and improved generation elsewhere. That bargain matters. The project reopened access while maintaining the system's overall hydropower capacity, demonstrating that restoration did not always require an all-or-nothing war against electricity. No reports that short-nosed sturgeon regained access to all of their historic habitat in the river. Its deeper achievement was institutional. The Penobscot Nation was not treated as decoration at the ribbon cutting. Tribal interests helped shape the project. Yet the ecological verdict remains mixed. Some species responded while endangered Atlantic salmon still face threats far beyond any one set of dams. The strongest rival changes the scale entirely. On the Klamath River, 4 large dams were removed in a coordinated project completed in 2024. NOAA describes it as the largest dam removal project in the world, opening more than 400 miles of habitat to salmon and other migratory fish. The Klamath effort carried enormous engineering, financial, and political weight. Reservoir drawdown, demolition, water quality control, and landscape stabilization unfolded across multiple sites. The project also followed generations of advocacy by tribes whose fisheries and cultures had absorbed the costs of the blocked river. Its early signs are compelling. Crews have reseeded former reservoir lands, monitoring teams are tracking fish, and salmon have already been observed moving into newly accessible reaches. But this is precisely where editorial restraint matters. A young recovery cannot yet supply the decades of evidence that its promise deserves. Klamath may eventually become the new standard. Its geographic reach and tribal significance could surpass every predecessor. For now, however, much of the decisive ecological story remains future tense: which populations establish, how food webs change, and whether restored reaches remain productive through drought, heat, and disease. That leaves a demanding question for the reveal. Which project combined large structures, a complete watershed experiment, cultural restitution, and enough elapsed time for scientists to watch the river rebuild itself from its headwaters to the sea? The Elwha River Restoration Project is the GOAT of completed large dam removal river restoration projects. 2 dams came out between 2011 and 2014, freeing a river that had been blocked for roughly a century and reopening more than 70 miles of habitat. The project began with a historical injury. The dams were built in the early 1900s without fish passage, cutting salmon from most of the watershed. Reservoirs also flooded land in cultural places central to the lower Elwha Claim tribe. Congress finally authorized full ecosystem and fisheries restoration in 1992. Removal was not a leap into darkness. Scientists built a rare before and after record of fish, sediment, vegetation, water, river channels, and the coast. That baseline transformed the project from a construction job into a controlled observation of how a large river responds when 2 major barriers disappear. The engineering problem was dominated by stored sediment. The reservoirs held tens of millions of cubic meters of it. Rather than hauling the mountain away by truck, crews lowered the reservoirs and removed the dams in stages, allowing floods and ordinary river flow to carry sediment downstream over time. The release remade the channel. New bars formed, old floodplain connections returned, and sediment traveled all the way to the river mouth. The coast, previously starved of river-borne material, gained new beach and estuary habitat. Few dam removals have been observed across such a complete chain, from reservoir to nearshore ocean. Behind the former dams, barren reservoir beds did not simply become forest overnight. Crews planted native vegetation, while wind, water, animals, and surviving seed banks filled the gaps. Some areas stabilized quickly, others remained rough and mobile. Restoration here meant guiding succession, not landscaping a finished park. Fish supplied the most emotionally charged test. Salmon are anadromous, meaning they hatch in fresh water, mature at sea, and return to rivers to reproduce. After passage reopened, multiple species moved above the former dam sites. Naturally produced juveniles have also been documented in newly accessible habitat. Yet the project does not win by pretending recovery is complete. No scientists report positive trends for Chinook salmon and steelhead, but historic abundance may take decades and is constrained by ocean conditions, warming water, habitat quality, and fisheries. Concrete can leave faster than a population can rebuild. The first dam was smaller and easier to dismantle. The second stood about 64 meters high, making the pair exceptional among completed removals. Staging the work across years reduced the chance of one overwhelming sediment pulse, while continued monitoring allowed managers to react when conditions departed from forecasts. Walk to the former structures now, and the most striking object is absence. A canyon that once ended in concrete carries water, wood, gravel, and fish again. That visual simplicity conceals decades of legislation, engineering design, tribal persistence, scientific argument, and fieldwork. The winner's reach also extends beyond the channel. Sediment built new land at the mouth, vegetation spread across former reservoirs, and predators and scavengers regained access to marine nutrients carried inland by salmon. The river resumed linking habitats that the dams had forced into separate stories. There were costs and complications. Released sediment temporarily raised turbidity, the cloudiness of water caused by suspended particles. Some fish suffered during the transition, and hatchery policy remains contested. The project is not proof that every dam should come out, or that removal repairs every historical harm. Its cultural meaning is equally hard to reduce to a fish count. Restoring access supported the Lower Elwha Clayoam tribe's long campaign for a river capable of sustaining salmon and cultural practice. That does not reverse a century of loss, but it changes who and what the river is managed for. The methodological legacy may be the decisive edge. Managers used adaptive management, meaning they treated each result as evidence for the next decision rather than following a rigid plan. The project's dense record now helps other rivers estimate sediment behavior, fish response, vegetation recovery, and the monitoring needed to distinguish hope from fact. Against Klamath, the judgment is necessarily provisional. Klamath is larger and may ultimately deliver the greater restoration. Elwha wins today because its changes have been measured through more years, across the river, delta, coast, vegetation, fish communities, and human institutions. It offers demonstrated complexity, not merely completed demolition. Its title matters because it proved restoration is not the erasure of a dam. It is the patient return of a living river, measured all the way from mountain gravel to the sea.